Good morning. Thanks everyone for attending our session. I am Tony Art from Axiom EPM, and I'm joined today with Steve Lisa. Just a second, I'll hand it over to Steve.
Yep.
So just a couple of quick comments here. We'll talk today about how Tufts University used Axiom EPM's technology to transform their budget process. Actually, I guess I need to be up here to forward the slides. Even though I feel like I'm 10 feet tall when I stand up here. So just a couple quick introductory comments. I think, I attended the keynote session yesterday with Paul LeBlanc, and some of the ideas that he brought up about being very intentional about how you innovate and how you use technology in terms of, what problems are you trying to solve, and then also how are you going to use the technology. So it sounds kind of obvious, but you see people failing with that frequently, and I think that's a great introduction to what Steve is going to talk about with what they've accomplished at Tufts University. First, and it was about technology, and that's what we got involved from Axiom, but they've done a great job about doing a process transformation as well as an organizational transformation, so taking into account all those aspects. And then kind of Steve personally, we've known Steve for almost 2 years now. He led this project from an IT point of view, very skilled project manager in terms of knowing what his business needs, being very savvy on the finance side, and then really kind of providing a lot of that kind of change management and kind of expertise and soft skills to make a successful project as well. So Steve's going to talk about kind of what they set out to do, what happened with the project, and then kind of some of the things that were learned along the way. And if there's any time at the end, we'll talk a little bit more about software in the cloud. So I'll just stay up here and do this.
Yeah, perfect. Okay. Thank you, sir. Good. Yes, as Tony said, we're going to talk a little bit about our project. We were joking coming in. We're going to probably take about 30 minutes to try to talk about a year's worth of our project that we've been doing. So for those that aren't familiar with Tufts, we're right here in Boston. We have 3 campuses right here in downtown Boston. And then we have a campus out in Medford, Somerville, which is our main campus. And then out in Grafton, we actually have our veterinary school. So Tufts is doing pretty good. They've been growing ever since I've been there, year over year. Endowment, as he shows there, 1.5, and growing. So as Tony mentioned, I'm manager ERP operations. Basically what that means is I help our functional users within finance and HR take advantage of technology and to get that to their advantage, take advantage of technology on the finance and HR side. Everything from data integration, reporting, system upgrades, enhancements. We're a PeopleSoft shop. We use PeopleSoft Financials, HR, and Campus Solutions. So this put me in a good spot. Move on to the next one. In terms of working on this project. So Tufts has been for forever managing basically a 800, give or take, $1 million budget on Excel spreadsheets across 12 different schools, everything from our medical, dental, nutrition, arts and sciences, engineering. So the idea was to replace a very decentralized Excel-based process where every school had its own little way of doing it. Everyone plans for their tuition a little bit different, various revenue, whether it's clinics, our dental clinics, whether it's our veterinary clinics out in Grafton. So everyone just does things a little bit different. So that was one big piece of this. And when we were doing our evaluation of different budgeting systems, EPM systems, Axiom definitely jumped out to us because of its configurability. It's not customizing, it's configuring. You could configure. They did a great job in their demos and demonstrating the various templates. For us, the key drivers was our standard operating budget and forecasting. But the key pieces was position management and grants budgeting. I think everyone with higher education knows that grants are their own unique animal. The grants don't live within our fiscal years. They come and go. Funding is very sporadic, guaranteed money for 1 year, but not maybe for the out years. So there's a lot of planning in terms of grants, and that was a big piece for us in what we wanted to build. And then as Tony started to hint on, Tufts is also going through a large reorganizational change where we're trying to bring a number of decentralized services into what they call sort of a service center approach, and budgeting is one of those, where we've had individual budget and fiscal officers in each of our schools, and they've now, we're literally going live this month with what we call a budget center, where folks from those schools are now working under one budget center. They're going to be using Axiom for the budgeting, the forecasting, and the position budgeting. And the idea is it's about 30, 35 people in the budget center that are going to be going out and working with the different schools and departments. They've set them up with different areas that are responsible for different schools, and they have one place to go in. So our overall project, we started last year. So again, we wanted to do operating, forecasting, positioning grants. So we broke it up into 2 phases. Phase 1, we tackled our operating budget and position budget. Operating and position being the 2 key pieces. A lot of the work that we needed to do was pulling data from our financial and HR applications. So we wanted to get the ground running right there, get started. So as you can see, the idea of the timeline is we started off basically late May last year. There's a lot of Tufts work that we did in terms of prepping and getting ready. And then what happened is once we were ready, we had Axiom come in roughly July last year. Axiom came in, did a design session with us, spent 2 days. And we basically just got together and said, this is what we're looking for in an operating budget. And we went through all the requirements, and basically from there, came up with a functional spec on what we wanted. And then we basically set off. I led a team of 4 what we call subject matter experts in budgeting from our medical school. We had a representative from our medical school, our dental school, our central office who handles finance, HR, IT, those large budgets, which are usually pretty significant, and our veterinary school. We picked them because they had what we thought was a best practice, and we wanted to build the system around those best practices working with Axiom. So I had those 4 subject matter experts, myself. We had another person that was sort of liaison of mine, very good at reporting, been there for a number of years, so understood our financial application, our reporting, and our systems, and how to get data out of it. So reporting was, you can see that blue line going across all the phases. And then we had our senior budget director just sort of overseeing and making sure that we were following his vision for a strategic budgeting process. So we did operating budget. We started off with that, got the wheels rolling, started getting data in. And then as we started doing operating budget and got that underway, we then jumped in on position budgeting, which turned out to probably be the more challenging piece of the project because it introduced grants. So on the operating budget, it was strictly what we call the hard money, the university's hard money. But on the position budgeting, you can not only budget on hard money, but you can budget on grants as well. And that's where we started to get into a little bit more complexity, and we worked our way through it. And overall, we were able to go live in the November timeframe. And then our phase 2, we started off and we jumped into forecasting, and then we did grants budgeting as well. So grants budgeting is more monitoring on an individual grant by grant basis and tracking that across basically its entire life, which we set up as a 5-year window from a grant perspective, from a grants plan. Okay. And we could talk more about it. We've got some screenshots and whatnot that we could show you. Unfortunately, we didn't have time to really set up and go through a demo, but we're happy to stick around after and visit the booth. I'll be around for a little bit. I can talk and show you.
Just make one comment on the project.
Please. Yeah.
I think from our perspective that this approach worked really well because we started with the operating budget, which was the biggest pain point, but also a pretty well understood process. So we worked on that together. I think the Tufts folks learned what was capable with the technology. Our team learned more about the environment at Tufts. Then we moved on to forecasting and grants, which were a little bit less understood at the start of the project, but by the time we got to those, we had an early win under our belts and kind of carried that momentum through, to some new processes and some new things that you guys hadn't been doing before.
Yeah, that's a great point. Yeah, you're absolutely right. I think we all, again, put grants budgeting in the tail end just because that's so complex and so different. And you're absolutely right. We all wanted to kind of get comfortable with Axiom, the technology, the software, and understand what its capabilities were before jumping into grants. So, yeah, perfect. Yeah. So this is sort of how our ecosystem's set up. So if you think about that timeline and the projects, we focused on the operating budget again because that is the key. Everything rolls into that operating budget. So we wanted to start there, position budgeting, a big piece of it. And then what we did is all these other pieces around it. So within operating budget, we did a small sort of bolt-on to operating for planning tuition and fees. We did something for financial aid, what we call carry-forward funding sources. And then in the phase 2, that's where we hit the forecasting and the grants planning. The next one, start to do some slides. So as we got started and kept going with the build, a key piece I mentioned was reporting. So one of the things that really intrigued us with Axiom, not only that it offered a cloud-based solution. So for us, we had a very tight schedule. We wanted to hit the ground running right away and get a system up and running. So not only is it with a cloud-based system allowed us to do that, I remember literally within a couple of days after signing our contract and getting things up and running, we literally got our cloud instance up and running. We could jump right in and start playing with it, which was pretty impressive. And on the flip side, another nice feature of Axiom that we thought really set them apart from the others is extremely robust reporting. We've got a data warehouse. We've got a lot of time and energy invested in a data warehouse and our BI reporting tools. We use business objects. We're a big Tableau shop, and Tableau's growing quite a bit from a reporting perspective. But we knew it would take us time again to learn Axiom, get in there, and start to get data into a budget system. So right out of the gate, though, we could take advantage of Axiom's reporting. And this is a snapshot, a screenshot of our operating budget dashboard that we were able to, again, build with Axiom. We had this built by November. And this is an interactive dashboard that's basically consolidating our actuals, our budget, our projected budget, and projected budget for the next 3 years. That's 15, 16, and 17. It's fully interactive. It models our operating statements that we built in PeopleSoft using a reporting tool within there. We had a nice feature that we could switch what we call functional classification versus natural classification. Functional being instruction, sponsored, different grouping categories. Natural being your compensation, non-comp types of expenses. So it just really allowed us out of the gate to just get right in and start getting reports out of it. And we're still, even just right now, just getting ready to pull data out of Axiom, bring it into our warehouse, so then we can distribute that reporting out to all of our various departments and whatnot. So really nice, robust reporting features in there. There you go. So this is just some screenshots of what we were able to build. This is our operating budget. Axiom has a nice feature. So again, we would have 4 different schools, well, 12 different schools. We had 4 different folks representing. But again, every school does budgeting just a little bit differently. So Axiom had a really nice feature, and we saw this in the early demos, called calc methods, calculation methods. And basically what that is point up here. It's just this simple, you can see it's got this body, you can't really read that, it says bottoms up, single line. What that allowed us to do is basically say, okay, I'm the medical school, I like to budget this way. I like to budget at a very detailed level. I like to budget, this is an example of travel. Travel expenses, Professor X is going here, this department's doing this. I can do it at a very detailed level. Where another school says, you know what, we don't do it that way. We just do a single line travel, here's a lump sum. So Axiom had this nice feature called calculation methods, and you can basically insert, we have a standard template, but you can insert that calculation method very easily. And just click a button and say, no, I want to do a full detail. Nope, I just want to do a single line. So we were able to take, basically different processes, allow that flexibility for our budget officers, but in a very consistent format. So again, you can kind of get a sense of it here where, again, it's a consistent format of the grouping of travel. This says materials and supplies down here. You can easily change this, down here, materials and supplies, from a single line to a bottoms up, and we even had one other calc method. I forget which one it was, but it was basically a percentage-based calculation that you could do. We had a name for it. But that's the idea there. And as you can see, we're bringing over actuals from our financial application, and then we're forecasting out the budgets going across. The next one. Yeah. So this is a screenshot of position budgeting. Again, we're pulling data from our HR application, where this example here, this is by a department. So this is our biology department. They've got a particular professor. So for this professor, you can see their name, which we blanked out, but their start date, their end date. We pull in their FTE, their salary. They've got the ability to do their merit adjustments right in here. They can plan for that. This particular professor was being 100% funded on a grant. So just like I talked about calculation methods for budgeting, we again took advantage of a nice feature in Axiom, those calculation methods for funding sources. So we had funding sources as a calculation method. We had grant, hard money, what else do we have? We had carry forwards, and then the other one that was important to us was what we call TBD grant, or to be determined grant. So the idea of you're planning out a budget for a particular faculty or staff member for next year. Maybe this year they're 100% on a grant. Well, maybe next year that grant ends, which I think in this example it does. It was ending in 14. Next year I can't plan that out, but I'm anticipating that that grant funding is going to come in. You would add what we call a TBD calculation method, a new funding source. It would say TBD grant. You could plug that in and say, okay, I'm anticipating that that grant's going to get renewed, and you could plan that out. But from a reporting perspective, we're saving that TBD grant, and then when we look at an operating statement or a department report, we can say, here's the grant money in hand for next year, but then here's our TBD funding. So you're identifying your risk. And again, I thought that was a really kind of a key piece for us that we picked up on. And again, it was working with the Axiom consultants in our group that we kind of came up with that methodology. And it was really pretty simple to do with the technology. So it really gives our budget office, from a planning perspective, they can see what's sort of at risk from a budget, what could be funded via grants versus what's going to be funded on that hard money. And then this does, it does do multiple years. It goes all the way out. And this has actually evolved a little bit since we did the grants template. But this is a pretty good idea of what it looks like even today. So how are we doing? So some of the lessons learned for us, agile methodology. So again, as we were going through and coming up with new practices, Axiom was great, and where they would present us a starting point in terms of here's what we think your template looks like. We would go through. So we were meeting Tuesday, Thursdays in the mornings. And what we were able to do was we'd meet Tuesdays and Thursdays, Axiom being on the West Coast, us being out here. So we'd meet from 9 to 12, Tuesday and Thursdays. Axiom would join us at 8 a.m. at 11 o'clock on our call. So we'd have 2 hours to talk about, all right, here's what we see, here's what we're doing. Axiom would dial in at 11 o'clock. They'd get a fresh perspective on what we're seeing, what we're looking at. So we'd talk to them for about an hour, and then they could take off at 9 o'clock their time and have the whole day to help build, plan, and start reacting to what we just told them. And then we'd come back the next day, and we'd come in, we'd have a nice email from them, say, hey, here's the latest updates that we made. So we had a very agile methodology that worked really, really well for us. And we turned what we thought was going to be a disadvantage, the time zone difference, into a positive. And we actually, I think, gained a lot of time and momentum. So it worked really well. The phasing, as we talked a little bit about, gaining some knowledge and expertise in the system, not just for us, but for Axiom, worked out really well. Another piece that was key for us was what we call super user training. We call the MSU hour, Master System User Hour, where basically we wanted to make sure Tufts could own the system at the end. So we set up basically an hour meeting, working with them to understand sort of the behind the scenes. So as they were building the system, they could help us go behind the scenes and learn how the system works, interacts, and really get to understand the technology and the pieces. So that worked out really well. And then again, this was a big organizational change. So there was a lot of communication from the top up, top down. I had to do weekly project status meetings to senior executives at the university, just saying, keeping in track where we are. Axiom did a great job of keeping us on track in terms of where they were with their resources. So it was a key piece in terms of communication and organization. So I thought it worked really well. Haven't seen that too much in my experience with higher ed, so I thought that worked out really well. That's pretty close. Results achieved. So yeah, so key for us is, again, a unified approach to budgeting that has some flexibility. Data's being pulled in. We pull in data nightly from our financial HR application, so they're getting up-to-date data. Like I said, this budget center's just going live. They've been getting some training. We did all the in-house training ourselves, documentation training, and it's worked out really well. We've taken advantage of Axiom's reporting out of the gate until we start to really get data in there, and as the organization is sort of reshaping, we'll be able to pull that data out of Axiom, put it into our warehouse, and then build even more robust reporting out of the warehouse. So, any other points on there maybe that you want to add?
Well, I think the data transparency was kind of a big, big win. Moving from a pure Excel budgeting process onto a technology platform. That sort of immediately gives you a lot more visibility into what's going on, and then, as Steve talked about, then rolling into a forecast process, and then as well as a grants planning process. So just creating kind of whole new planning processes that were enabled by the technology as well.
Absolutely.
And then all of that kind of part of this more strategic vision about the shared service model, things like that.
Right. Good.
So I had a couple slides here, so I can go for about 5 more minutes and then take questions for either Steve or me. Does that make sense?
Sounds good, yeah.
Okay, so just a couple things. This is to kind of pivot a little bit and talk about beyond the Tufts case study, but what to think about enterprise performance management solution. And this comes from an industry analyst called BPM Partners. So they focus on this part of the software industry, which too many acronyms: BPM, CPM, EPM. You'll hear all those. Really kind of means budgeting and planning software. But according to the 2015 survey from BPM Partners, these are kind of the things that people that are looking for EPM software in the market today. These are kind of the critical attributes of a system that they're looking at. And this actually is cross-industry, but I think every one of these points certainly applies to higher education. So the first one is ease of use. So what we see in higher education a lot is it's a very collaborative budget process, a very collaborative environment in general. And that tends to work its way into the budget process. So you want a system that's going to be easy to use. You may have people that are only in the budget system a couple times a year. They're not really finance people. So you want something that's very intuitive, easy to get to, easy to submit your budget requests, and move on with your real data. Another part then is best practice content. So some of the best practices around planning are built into the solution itself. So you're not building those up from scratch and kind of redoing those. And another important one, which is interesting, is integration with Microsoft Excel and the whole Microsoft suite. So it's funny, I've been in this business a long time. A few years ago, it was bad to talk about Microsoft and Excel, but I think everyone has realized it is still a tool of choice for most business users, and specifically for finance users. They're still using Excel. A lot of people in the market have tried to move away from Excel and they've failed, so people are finally coming back to, we need to work within Excel. That's going to be the tool of choice. And that's an approach we've always taken at Axiom. Another one is analytics. Steve hit on this quite a bit. So, it's not just about solving this problem of consolidating data and gathering input from a distributed user base. It's really about getting your arms around that data, consolidating it in a single place, and then doing some analytics on that data. So, bringing in that actuals from like a PeopleSoft, whatever your general ledger systems, your student systems are, doing some kind of rigorous scenario analysis and things like that, and then having a set of data that you can compare, look at trends, and make better decisions. And then the final piece then is about the cloud. So, most vendors in the marketplace today offer a cloud deployment. And the advantages of going with the cloud, you guys probably know all this. I speak to finance people a lot, so I have to put this slide in. So this may be a little simplistic. But basically the idea is, the vendor is taking care of maintaining the hardware and the software, handling all the maintenance behind the systems. Your users are just accessing the system through a secure internet browser or through a secure internet connection. And the advantages are basically, the upgrades are not something you have to worry about. Really very minimal support from the IT department. Not no support. I mean, you still need to do things like data integration, which was a fairly big effort at Tufts. And then I think there is this notion of of upgradability. So it actually, in the way we approach that is we call it upgradability with a choice. We don't actually push upgrades on our customers. We give them the discretion about when they take upgrades, because we don't want to push upgrades out to someone in the middle of one of their budget processes. We recognize people have different calendars and are doing different things with our software. So even though we're managing it, basically the customer says, okay, I'm ready for my upgrade. We don't push those across people. How are we doing on time?
Pretty good.
So I'll just hit 2 more slides. Actually 3 more, I guess. So basically this is our full product suite. Steve talked about most of these. We do have customers doing things like long-range planning, so doing a 5 to 10 year strategic financial plan which supports your big vision. We also have some customers that are doing student aid planning, so matching up students that are this system is primarily about graduate students, matching them up to different funding sources. We also do enrollment planning as well. And then a whole set of capabilities come along with that. So the cloud deployment, data integration tools are native to the platform, a security model. We really do embrace Excel. You may have got a sense from that from Steve's section, but basically, we have multiple end user consumption models. They can get to the system through Excel, they could get to the system through a browser, and all of those, are configured in a way that's aimed toward the higher education market. This is the result from the most recent Gartner survey. So in our space, which Gartner calls CPM, we finished #1 in the customer satisfaction survey the last 2 years. Something we're very proud of. It kind of, bleeds through everything we do in our organization. We're very much about customer satisfaction. And then just finally, we do have a booth here. We're at number 316. We'll also be hosting a roundtable lunch. You can stop by and talk to Steve some more. We are attending some other events as well. We'll be speaking with Stanford University in Austin in September. So if any of you attend the Akubo shows, or that one actually isn't a Akubo show, we'll be at that one as well. So I think there I'll pause. We have about 4 minutes left according to my watch. If there are any questions. Yeah, go ahead.
Steve, was this a project to replace your current financial system, or was PeopleSoft Financials not able to do this?
We 2 separate systems. So PeopleSoft Financials, that's our GL, that's our system of record, and this was purely looking at a budget and planning system. So replacing what was basically done on Excel spreadsheets.
So those are not functions available in PeopleSoft Financials?
There are different modules. They have a different tool. Hyperion is the Oracle tool that would interact, and Hyperion was just too big of a monster for us for what we were looking for. Axiom was a perfect fit for what we were looking for. But we did look at Hyperion, all the lists that they had up there. We looked at quite a few of them. Yep.
So you don't think that the Oracle budget module can do that?
I'm sure it could do it. To us, from what we gathered and talking to various institutions and whatnot, it's just a much bigger effort. There's a lot more resources involved for what we were trying to do. I think the big one that we really wanted to get after was position management and grants budgeting. We talked to a lot of different schools. I don't think there's a lot of schools out there that really got a good handle on grants budgeting. And I think what we're going to have with Axiom really is, I'm going to use the word cutting edge, is probably a better word for it, but being able to plan. So this grants budgeting module, we literally just finished this up, and we're getting ready to start a pilot with our medical school coming up in August. So we're going to have what we call research administrators that are in the medical school that literally have hands-on knowledge with grants budgeting, the grants management, not just proposals, but how they're spending it, how they're planning for it. They're going to be able to go into Axiom, pull in, here's a current status of a grant, here's what we've been awarded to date, here's the budget to date, here's what we're expecting to be awarded for the life of the grant, the 5-year award, here's how I'm planning on spending that. So here's your guaranteed money versus what's proposed to come in over the 5 years. So they're going to be able to plan that out over the course of 5 years. And then what we're going to do is be able to take a snapshot. So that's saved on a monthly basis. We're going to be able to take a snapshot and fiscalize that grant. Because a grant could start midway through the year, a third of it could start anywhere during the year. So we're going to be able to take a snapshot of that and then pull that right into our operating budget to say, okay, here's what we got in operating budget, what we call hard money. here's what we've got so far with soft money. And then I talked about that risk, that ability to identify what we call TBD grants, what's not in hand, and really be able to take a snapshot. So I think that was a lot of key there.
How expensive is Axiom?
Reasonable. Put it much less than Hyperion. much less. So, yeah, much less.
Just following up on the grants, this seems terrific. A lot of times on grants, you're spending some of the grant money for hardware, let's say, but then some of it's salary expense.
Yep.
Does the Axiom system help the individual grant administrator to budget that?
Absolutely. Plan for that. Yep. So we did a compensation and non-comp. So actually our grants planning piece, it's grant by grant. And on the grant, the first piece is the compensation. We actually pull in, show me all of the positions that are funded by that grant, and we bring in their percentage. So it says maybe Professor X is 25%, this professor is 50%. So we pull that in, and we pull that in from our position planning roster. So the position planning roster is by a department. So if you're in biology, so biology hires somebody, that is your home department. So that professor works in biology, 50% is maybe on that grant, 50% is hard money. But if you're administering that grant, you can see Professor X is funded 50% from that grant. It pulls it all in and gives you a complete picture of who's being funded on that grant, and you can jump back and forth between the two and make those adjustments if you need to.
But is it worth pointing out to you guys, this is mainly about post-award spending plans. They use Quali-Proteus for pre-award.
Pre-award,
you know, all the grants application piece. And we're coming along and helping monitor, once the grant is awarded, monitor how that money's coming in, how that money's being spent, and aligning that with the budget process.
Yes, which is very key. Yeah. So. Yeah, please.
Are you planning to transition out of PeopleSoft financials?
No, not anytime soon, no.
This can't make up for all the rest of it?
No, not AP, purchasing, GL, no.
What was your biggest challenge working with this company?
I'm going to be honest. That last slide is, Tony said with the customer service, that goes a long way. And I'll speak frankly. There was some hesitancy, with Axiom early on. They didn't have a big foothold in the higher education market. Stanford, Yale were their two big users. Different models. But honestly, when we looked at the software, again, the flexibility, the reporting is a bonus. I mean, that's a cherry on top, that you've got this incredibly robust reporting built right into it, analytics. And the customer service, I mean, that went a long way for us, and it's absolutely true. They've absolutely been fantastic in terms of customer service. They deployed, not only do we have a cloud production, we have a cloud development system as well. So as soon as we had our production environment up, we immediately wanted to start working in a test environment. Bam, as soon as I got that email sent off, bam, it was set up and running in no time. It's been really nice. The cloud, it's just been very, very, very nice. I'm hoping to send an email to our Axiom support guys tonight to say, give them the green light to upgrade our production system from version 7 to version 8. So we're ready to sort of go live on Monday with our new budget center, the new fiscal year, the role. We're doing all that right now. And I can just do it from my cell phone. I don't have to do anything. So it'd be nice. Okay, so I think that's it. I think we're just about out of time.
We're out of time.
So
Yes,
great,
we are.
thank you.
Thank you.